Hey everybody, super fun things that we get to do now. We're going to start looking at the unit circle, which is the basic knowledge of all things you need to be successful in trigonometry with graphing waves and all sorts of goodness that we haven't really conquered yet. We've solved some sides of triangles and stuff like that, but now we're going to go deeper into trigonometry. So basically, here's what happens. Over here I've got this circle, see it? And it's called the unit circle, which means that the radius of the circle is going to be 1. And that makes all of the difference in the world and makes things a lot easier. So because the value of r is 1, each point on the circle, the sine, cosine, and tangent, are defined as, well, let's see, sine is always opposite over hypotenuse. So the sine is going to be, see this point right here, that point xy, the sine is just going to be y over 1 because the hypotenuse is 1. So the sine is going to be whatever the y value of the point is. If that's true, then the cosine is always going to be the adjacent over the hypotenuse. So that's going to be your x value over 1 because the hypotenuse is 1 on a unit circle, or x. And then your tangent is going to be the opposite, which is your y value over your adjacent. So let's say that's going to be your y over your x. So tangent is actually just a slope. So the coordinates of P can be written as the x is going to be your cosine of theta, and the y is going to be your sine of theta. And this right here, basic knowledge, if you know this, you can construct pretty much anything that we need in the unit circle. All right, let's take a look over here. So as I'm thinking about the unit circle, I always start on my x-axis. So that means like halfway around the circle, 180 lives right there. So 180, 90, 270, those are going to be hugely important. Then, from there, there are going to be 3 basic angles that we're going to look at. Those are our reference angles. And we'll learn something about 30 degrees, we'll learn something about 45 degrees, and we'll learn something about 60 degrees. And those are the things, after spring break, the goal is that you have these pieces memorized, because if you know all of those things that I've just highlighted, you can do anything in trigonometry. So the following angles used, so for sure 0, 90, 180, 270, and 360, and then 30, 45, 60, super important. All right, so they're called quadrantal angles, these, the 0, 90, 180, and 270, so they're not like in a quadrant, they just make up the quadrants. Okay, so that's a little basic. Now we're going to go through and find all of the values for sines and cosines of these important things. All right, so let's think about 0 or 360. So that's as we go out here, okay? In radians, that's going to be 0, or how many pi's to get around. You can see me spinning a car, circumference is 2 pi r. And since the radius is 1, that's great. Okay. So we're going to kind of skip around here. Let's see. If 360 is 2 pi, then 180 is 1 pi. 90 is straight up. That's half of a pi, or pi over 2. And then 270 is down like this, straight down. So that's 3 pi's over 2. Okay, those are going to be super valuable. Okay, so let's think about those things. I'm going to draw a little triangle right here. Or that's not a triangle, that's a circle. So here's 0, 2 pi. And so we're going to look at this point right here. That point, because the radius is 1, is over 1 up 0. Well, then over here at pi, that's also going to be like 1 away from the center, except for it's -1. Okay, so I'm going to write that -1, 0 right here. And we could go up and say this was 1, 0. Then what about 90 and 270? Well, those are still 1 away, but that's over 0 up 1 and over 0 down 1. Okay, so 0, 1. Okay, if we know these things, we can now construct the sine and the cosine. So I'm just going to write this down here. So sine goes in this, cosine is going to go in this, and tangent is going to go in this. So that cosine isn't on the unit circle. I'm just trying to fit things in. Okay. Okay, so I've got some things in here, and I had to go back and like fix what I was doing. So let's grab this picture. Whoop. Okay. So let's start with sine right here. Well, sine is opposite. All right. And so sine being the opposite is also your x value. No. It's not your x value. It's your y value. Oh my gosh. Sine is your y value. Sine is the y value. Okay. Sine is the y value. So let's just make this all green because that's fun. So if sine is my y value, for pi over 2, the y value is 1. For pi, the y value is 0. For 270, the y value is negative 1. You can go up here, at 0, the y value is 0. Okay, then when we're looking at the cosine, that is the x value. Cosine because it's your adjacent. Okay, so the x value is going to be 1, 0, negative 1, and 0. So if you can put those together, that's going to be awesome. All right, now the tangent is always your rise over 1, y's over x. So it's going to be the sine over the cosine. Well, in this case, sine, so the y value is 0, the x value is 1, so your tangent is going to be 0. Now the next one, it's going to be y over x, so that's 1 over 0. However, you can't do that. What do you call it when 0 is on the bottom? Undefined. Okay, this one is going to be 0 over negative 1, which is just 0. This one is going to be negative 1 over 0. You can't do that, so undefined there. All right, stick with me. I know this is getting long, but this is like the most valuable video in the whole thing. All right, so actually we're just going to stop here, and then we'll spend time in the next video looking at 30, 45, and 60.